Oracle Cloud applications. Each learning subscription includes a host of features designed to simplify and enhance your experience so that you can quickly achieve your learning goals. Learn by job role. There's training for all job roles on your team that interact with and support your Oracle Cloud applications. Learn by skills. Skills-based training is mapped to job roles so that you can learn the required skills for your role. Learn by topic. Training is further segmented into learning modules on specific topics. You can take training on topics designed to build a skill or select a particular topic of interest. And learning paths help guide you every step of the way. Afterwards, assess what you've learned with a skills check. You can also practice what you learned with hands-on labs. Track your learning progress and achievements through your individual dashboard. Company-level reporting is also available. Oracle Cloud Learning subscriptions also offer other unique ways to learn. Connect with Oracle through live training events from within your learning subscription. Get answers to your questions directly from an Oracle instructor. And take advantage of community events with access to the Oracle Applications Customer Connect community. Oracle Cloud Learning subscriptions also cover you across the entire lifecycle of your cloud applications. What this means is that you can get an introduction to your cloud applications through the Getting Started training. Build skills with in-depth functional and technical training. And to stay up to date on the new features with each product release, come back and take Delta training through our What's New training. Finally, your Oracle Cloud Learning subscription also provides you with an integrated online training and testing experience. Oracle certification exams are included with your learning subscription, so you can achieve an industry-recognized credential that validates your skills. Access to register for an exam is provided directly from within your learning subscription. Exams can be taken online with remote proctoring or in person at an authorized Pearson VUE test center. Upon passing the exam, an Oracle certification badge will be provided to you, which can then be digitally shared, enabling real-time verification of your credential. Since Oracle technology changes rapidly, stay current through an Oracle Cloud Learning subscription. Your learning experience couldn't be any better. Learn more about Oracle Cloud Learning subscriptions by calling your Oracle Education representative or by visiting education.oracle.com/cloud. To be effective in the cloud,
Welcome to Oracle University, and thank you for joining today's live webcast. Audio for this WebEx session is only available through the voice conferencing feature. At any time, you can ask your question through the chat function. Today's presentation is being recorded and will soon be available from Oracle University. And now, let's begin our live presentation.
Hello everybody, and welcome to this live event for Cloud Learning subscription called Adding New Product Families to a New Commerce Process. And as the subtitle shows on this first slide, this is going to lead us to the territory of working with multiple commerce process objects. Now before we get too far into that though, we do want to put a cautionary statement in place. This technique is not always necessary. All right, so you will see that cautionary statement coming up on a slide very shortly. Here we see our objectives for this session. We want to understand potential reasons for multiple commerce process objects, and that's leading to the statement which I was alluding to earlier. Once we understand that context, then we can start getting into creating a new product family and also a new commerce process object. I should say right here at the beginning, you don't have to be creating a brand new product family right at the moment you're creating a new commerce process object. You could have two product families that have been in place for a long time. Then you come along and create a new commerce process object, and you connect one of them to the new commerce process object. That is also viable. But in giving this seminar, or this presentation, I want to show building that new product family, just so that you're understanding all the parts that are at work together with one another. Now, the last bullet here is very important. Set up conditions to trigger a particular commerce process from a configurator that's tied to a particular product family. We're going to do that by creating some rules, as you will see. All right, here is the slide I was alluding to earlier. Considerations. Be aware, creating multiple commerce process objects will add complexity to your site. And for that reason, sometimes it's better to think about perhaps alternative mechanisms that might accomplish something before launching into this. But there are cases where multiple commerce process objects would be the answer to a particular situation. There's also another sort of disclaimer at the bottom of this slide. This presentation is focused only on the steps to create the objects involved. It doesn't expand and give full coverage of all implications to other parts of the system, nor does it cover all of the variety of settings that might be used. We're basically going to push forward and build a working situation so that you see how it's done. But the full coverage of implications is not going to be here, partly for sake of time. Alrighty, next slide. Notice in the reddish-colored or pinkish-colored boxes on the lower left, we have two different configurators. The first one's called the high-tech configurator, and the second one is called the pizza configurator. Oops, I got an extra circle there, more than I bargained for. Let me erase that. So this is just a diagrammatic representation of two different configurators, and notice on the right-hand side, they're connected to two different commerce process objects. The first one connected to Commerce Process Object 1, and the second one to Commerce Process Object 2. And what you get when you create a new Commerce Process Object is territory within which you can build a full set of alternative attribute definitions, workflow settings, integrations to third-party systems. So a lot of those objects are tied to a given Commerce Process Object. And so building a new one frees it up to be, creating differentiating features between these two. All right, so how does it begin? Creating a new product family is something that's more common than the new commerce process object, so I'll go relatively quickly through this part. You'll see it when I do my demo. You start on the admin homepage and then click the link called Product Definition and give a name to your new product family. In this case, I'm going to call it guitars. All right, I happen to play guitar on the side. I'm not great, but I enjoy it. So let's think about that perhaps as an alternative product family name. The label on the left is the human readable name. The variable name on the right is called the variable name of this object. And if you've worked in CPQ Cloud to any extent, you probably realize that almost all of the objects have a human readable name, and then they also have an associated variable name. The variable name is what's used for referencing one object to another at sort of the system level, rather than people looking at that name. But this is important. I have a whole slide dedicated to showing that, because later on when we build a process invocation rule, we need to identify the variable name of this product family. As I mentioned, I'm not going to have lots of slides talking about building out the product family and its hierarchy, because I think this is a more well-known aspect of what I'm discussing today. But just to make the connection so that everybody is aware, when you go into a configurator or a salesperson opens up a configurator, that configurator is going to be part of a particular product family. What I've shown in the slide is the model level object in the hierarchy that I'm going to be creating in my demo, which in this case, the object is called guitar order. And it's down at the model level where we typically hit this pull down in the navigation and choose configuration flows to create a configuration flow object, which has tied to it the desktop layout or the layout editor for your configurator. All right, so I just want you to be aware that whenever you're going into a configurator, that configurator belongs to a particular product family, and that's important to understand if you want to tie that configurator to a new commerce process object, which is what we're about to embark on. Because the thing that you connect to your commerce process object is the product family name or object, or sorry, it's a variable name, I guess. But that product family has an associated hierarchy of objects, and the configurator is part of that. All right, on the next slide here, we're showing the easiest way to create a new commerce process object is to clone an existing one. Make a copy of an existing one is typically the easiest starting point, and that's what I'm going to do here when I do my demo. I've navigated into process definition. You see the existing commerce process object where my mouse is pointing. This one happens to be called sales engine _ commerce process. If you pull down the navigation to deployment center, you'll come to a place where you have the opportunity to turn on a radio button called clone, and then you can click over in the lower right-hand corner, add event. And this basically activates whatever definition for an event that you've identified over on the left. So if you choose clone and then click add event, it will start a scheduled job to perform the cloning action on this commerce process object. Now, note, you could schedule it to run the clone operation in a future date and time if you wanted to. By default, it lands on the time where you start this up, which is what I will use when I do the demo coming up shortly. Next, we will now be able to go into process invocation, a different area, and go to what are called page items in here and create rules within those page items. Notice down on the bottom for this model configuration page item, there are two actions. One is called create quote, one is called add to cart. These are the actions that would be available in the configurator. Usually a button at the upper right might say create transaction or create quote. If the configurator has been designed to be made available directly to your customers, which is sometimes the case, they will typically see a button that says add to cart. Add to cart. So we see that, as an option here. It's actually not activated for my system. So the only one that really would have any impact on what I'm building is the first one in this list, create quote. And I'm going to build a rule on that object. And when you build a rule, down in the lower the lower left corner, you can pick a radio button next to a particular commerce process object. So notice here is the guitars commerce process object, the new one that will have been added, and you can associate a rule with that. So this is really the key to associating a particular product family with a particular commerce process object. You set up a rule, which is where I've drawn my oval in blue, and typically the rule is going to be based in BML code. So you'd have to choose advanced, and then define function will take you into the BML editor. But importantly, remember, we're associating the association of that product family, which is going to happen in this rule, with, down in the lower left, the guitar commerce process object. All right, so this is kind of the key to connecting a product family with a commerce process object. When I click that, go back a slide here, define function gray button, I land in the BML editor. BML is the coding language for CPQ Cloud. Some of you have probably worked in BML already, but if you haven't, the BML that I'm adding here is actually very simple. So you could simply hard code it, and this will work. This is the only BML that is needed to be put in place. So what's being done here takes a little bit of understanding. First of all, the only line is a line that says return, so it's going to return something. And then what it returns is nested inside of parentheses, and it says _model _segment _var _name equals guitars. This _model _segment _var _name is an attribute behind the scenes And if you set it equal to guitars, that is going to associate to a product family that has the variable name guitars. Notice in that attribute it has _var_name as part of the name of the variable itself, or the attribute. And model segment means a product family. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the word segment in CPQ Cloud is basically a synonym for product family. Right? Product family, segment, they mean the same thing. So this special attribute that we're referencing is one that knows how to make an association to a particular product family using the variable name of that product family. All right. After we build our rule, we actually have to click a deploy button, which is shown on the next slide here on the lower right-hand corner from this list called the page list. Now, I had showed you the page list earlier. Let me go back a couple of slides just to make sure we understand where we got to that location. Process invocation is a link that shows up when you're on the admin homepage, and then you come to this page list. But down in the lower right corner of the page list is a deploy button. This screenshot didn't show that deploy button, just for sake of fitting everything on that page. But as part of that full page list area, there is a deploy button. You can turn on the checkbox next to any of the objects in here that have been modified to basically activate them when you click the deploy button. And notice I didn't mention earlier, there are actually two of these page list items that need to be set up with the same exact type of rule. The first one is called model configuration. The second one is called recommended items. These are two of the mechanisms by which the quote can go from the configurator into commerce. Data can travel from the configurator area into the world of commerce. So we're accommodating both of those. There are other types of page items in this list too, which won't impact what I'm demonstrating today, but there are other places where you can write rules for initiating as well. The note on the very bottom of the slide is mentioning the recommended items object will also be used when I do my demo. Well, those are basically the steps that we have to go through to set all this up. And it wasn't very many slides, as you take note of. It might have been 10 or 11 slides. Now we're ready to test it out. But I want to, first of all, walk through this bullet list of how we're going to test it, so that you understand the techniques that I'm going to be using. I'll reiterate this when I get into my demo. All right, it says, open up the desktop layout editor for your new commerce process object and add a new commerce attribute somewhere just to indicate this is the new commerce object's layout. What does that mean? It basically means we made a clone of the existing commerce process object, which has a desktop layout as part of it. But how would you know if you've landed on one desktop layout versus another in these two commerce objects? That we're going to make a difference on the new one that we create simply by creating an attribute that will act like a flag, and then place that attribute onto the desktop layout someplace where we can see it. And if we see that attribute, we know we've landed in the new commerce process object. If we don't see that attribute, we know we have landed in the old or the original commerce process object. All right, so that's going to be our technique. Open up the desktop layout editor for the new commerce process object, put a new commerce attribute somewhere in there to act as an identifier or a flag. Second bullet, leave the original desktop layout of the original commerce process object as is. So there won't be any changes on the original commerce process object. Third bullet, create a new quote using one of your original configurators. Verify that those are still going to the original commerce process, i.e., you don't see your indicator attribute showing up in that case. And then the last one, create a quote using the new configurator, the guitars configurator, in the words that I've been using in these slides, and I'll use in my demo as well. So go to your new configurator, create a quote from there. That new configurator is tied to the new product family, and when you click create quote and land in commerce, hopefully we will see the indicator attribute showing up, demonstrating this quote has landed in the new commerce process. All right, it takes about 10 minutes for me to shift gears to share my desktop. I will stop talking momentarily while that change happens, and then I'll do my demo. All right, you should now be looking at my desktop. And let me go into my CPQ Cloud instance that I'm working with. If I go to Product List on the upper left right now, Product List, you'll see that I have two product families already pre-built. One's called High Tech Managed Hosting, one's called Amo La Pizza Chicago. And if you've taken any of the Oracle University training courses for CPQ Cloud, you might have seen this Amo La Pizza Chicago. It's one that we create in Yellow Belt training, and we add more definition to it in the Blue Belt training. All right, so those two product families already exist. Next, let's go over here to Admin, into Process Definition. And you'll notice there's only one Commerce Process object right now, Sales Engine Commerce Process. So both of those two configurators, if you walk through them and click Create Quote, will land in this Commerce Process object. But we're going to add a new product family with its new configurator and create an accompanying new Commerce Process object. I have a Microsoft Word document here with all the steps that I'm going to be walking through. So the first one says go to Admin Product Definition. This is where we're going to create a new product family called Guitars. And we'll populate the variable name with lowercase g, Guitars. All right, let's do that first. So go to Admin. And to get to the Product Definition link on this page, you go down to the lower left underneath Products, click on Product Definition. Here are the two product families that already exist, Amo La Pizza Chicago and High Tech. I'll click Add on the lower right corner and give the name Guitars with an uppercase G for the human readable name, but the variable name will have a lowercase g, as you see there. Let's click Add. Notice that when you first build a new product family, you'll see this red coloring on the last modified. That's an indicator that it has not yet been deployed. And so the next step in my script says, in the drop-down box for the new Guitars product family, select Deployment Center, click List, and then the Deploy button, wait 5 seconds for it to finish deploying. So let's do that. We'll hit the drop-down for my new Guitars product family, choose Deployment Center in the drop-down, and hit List. That's the standard navigation in CPQ, by the way. CPQ Cloud is you pick the option that you want from the navigation pull-down, and then you click the List button to go to that spot. All right, in this case, all I need to do is click the Deploy button on the right-hand side. It starts up a scheduled job right now, so it's not scheduled for the future. It's running right at the moment. And notice the status right now says pending. But if I wait 5 seconds and hit the refresh button, it disappears, and that's the indicator that it has been deployed. All right, so I have a new product family definition. It does not have a hierarchy or a configurator associated to it. We're going to be putting those in place very soon. But before we do any of that, we're going to create the new Commerce Process object. So you see, we're going to build both of these things right near the beginning. We'll go to Admin Process Definition. In the navigation drop-down box, choose Deployment Center, and then we'll choose that clone event type and click Add Event over on the side. So this is Admin Process Definition is underneath Commerce and Documents, or you can get it in this secondary list of links up above. Either link will take you to the same place. Process Definition. So I'm going to go to my existing Commerce Process object and pull down to Deployment Center and hit List. And one of my options in here is called Clone. Clone, right there on the left-hand side. I'll choose that and then click Add Event on the right-hand side. This is going to start a process that's going to make a copy of the existing Commerce Process object. This will probably take a minute or so for it to run. Notice it's in the pending status right now. But while it's running, let's go back to our instructions, scroll down a little bit. Yeah, it says wait approximately 1 minute, hit the refresh button, and by that time the deployment should have, or the copy should have taken place, or the clone. If not, you can just wait a little bit longer. Then we're going to go to Admin Process Definition. We should see a new Commerce Process object show up in there, and we're going to rename, we're going to change the process name of the new one to Guitars Commerce Process. All right, back in here, let's hit the refresh button and scroll down. I think it disappeared, which it did, so that means it finished. If I go back up to Admin Process Definition, now I should see two Commerce Process objects. The new one is the second one that says Copy Of, but you can actually click on the name and change the name of it, and that's what I'm going to do. We'll call it the Guitars, get rid of that extra letter, Guitars commerce process, and then click Update on the lower right corner. Click Update. So here are my two different commerce process objects. Let's go back to our instructions. Now go to Admin Process Invocation and click Model Configuration. This is an area where we can build rules for our commerce process objects. All right, so go back to process definition. Go back to the admin homepage and go to Process Invocation. It's the second link underneath Commerce and Documents. This one does not have a corresponding link in the secondary row of links at the top. So Commerce and Documents, Process Invocation, and then click on Model Configuration. We actually have to build rules under two of these. So let's first go to Model Configuration. And then it says, to the right of Create Quote, select Rules, and then click List. So here's Create Quote. Over to the right, select Rules for the Create Quote mechanism, and hit List. And we come in, and there's only one rule right now that's kind of a catch-all for all configured models coming from a configurator to go into Commerce. What we're going to do is add a new rule in this area. So it says click Add to create a new rule and name your rule Guitars and select the radio button to associate this new rule with the Guitars Commerce Process object at the left. So notice if I open up the existing one, Create Quote, that it's associated with Sales Engine Commerce Process on the lower left. Let's hit the back button. But now if I go to add a new one, and I'm going to call it, Sales Commerce Process. Why did I not see my new, I think I skipped a step. Hold on a second, folks. I'm pretty sure I know what this is. Let's go to Process Definition. I never triggered the standard commerce deployment for my new commerce object, and I'll bet it was in the instructions and I skipped over it. Deployment Center. Yeah, for the Guitars. So I'm going to deploy my Guitars Commerce Process object right now. Now you can do it from here. Go into the Deployment Center and deploy it. Or I think I can go to Admin Homepage and click the quick links next to Process Definition. And at this point, it knows I have two Commerce Process objects. So I'll choose Guitars Commerce Process and now hit Deploy in here. Pretty sure this is the reason that it didn't show up as being selectable in the other spot. So I apologize. I skipped over a spot here. So I've hit the Deploy button, and then it's just a matter of waiting for amount of time, which is typically about half a minute. So I'm hoping that was enough. All right, now that I've done that, let's go back here to this area of building the rule. So we're going to go in Admin Process Invocation, Model Configuration. By Create Quote, we'll click Rules and click List, and then add a new one in here. All right, so Process Invocation, Model Configuration. For Create Quote, choose Rules and hit List, and add a new one. Yes, now notice in the lower right corner, I have the original Commerce Process object, and I have the new Guitar one. Phew, sigh of relief. So we'll name our rule Guitars, and make sure to associate it down in the lower left with Guitars Commerce Process, and click Add. Now notice in the middle, there's only one option for rule type, but after you choose the second one and click the Add button, you do see the other option called Advanced with a Define Function button on it, and that's what we need to use, which is coming up here in a minute. All right, so we selected the radio button for the Guitars Commerce Process object at the lower left. Click Add to save the new rule, which I did. Select the radio button for Advanced, and then Define Function. All right, Advanced, and then click Define Function. That'll pop open the BML editor. And the first thing you are able to do when you get in the BML editor is select attributes that might be associated to your BML code. We only need one of those. The one we need is underneath the Model Variable Name tab. Turn on the checkbox for _model_segment_var_name. All right, so Model Variable Name is one of our tabs up above. And I need to turn on the checkbox for _model_segment_var_name. Click Next. So that attribute you see up above is in scope for my code. And now I have to write in that code which we had mentioned. Return space open paren. And if you have your cursor sitting in a spot in the BML editing box, you can go up and click on one of the attributes that's in scope and just click it, and the reference will go into that spot where your cursor had been sitting. So we put that in place, and then a double equals and quotation guitars. Now this has to match exactly, and then a semicolon, exactly the variable name of the product family that we created. And I'm fairly confident that is the name, but if we needed to go back there and double check, we could. All right, so underscore model, underscore segment, underscore var, underscore name, double equals guitars. Back in here and make sure that's all saved. Now I'm going to click Save and Close in the lower right corner. Save and Close for that BML. That brings me back to the rule where I had been building, and I have to click Update on this. Click Update to save my new rule. Now you'll see two rules in place here, but we actually need to put the guitars rule up in the top of the list. And that's mentioning here in the next section. It says, making sure the new rule is first in the list of rules. Now, why do we have to do this? It's because when a new set of data from a configurator is being launched, so to speak, toward commerce, this this area of rules will be evaluated starting at the top of the list. And if you have it in the sequence that's showing up right now, create quote up there at the top says always true for its condition. So that'll match everything, whether it's a quote from the high-tech managed hosting configurator or from the guitars one. It'll still match everything here. So if we left this create quote rule up at the top of the list, it would catch all of the generated quotes before the second rule had a chance to fire. And this is a common programming device that's used in CPQ Cloud and a lot of other places as well. And what we need to do is actually put the guitars rule first in the list. And the way you do that is change the order by putting a number 1, just hand enter number 1 for guitars, and then click the apply button, I believe it is, on the lower right corner. Let me go back to my instructions here. So it says save and close the BML. Now it says change the guitars to number 1 and click the apply button. There we go. Sometimes these buttons are called update, sometimes they're called apply. So click the apply button and note that guitars now went to the top of the list. And that's what we want, so that when a new quote data is launched from a configurator, the first rule is going to fire and check, is the product family of this newly generated quote data guitars? If so, then this rule will fire, and it's going to use the guitars commerce process. Let me hit the back button. But if that one didn't match, then the logic will fall into the second one, create quote. So this one will act as a catch-all for the other two configurators that are already in place. There's a pizza one, the Amo Pizza Chicago, and then there's the high-tech managed hosting. All right, but we had to make sure that the new one was placed first in this sequence. Back to my instructions. After we click the apply button, and when the page refreshes, guitar should be listed first, which it is. Now it says go to admin process invocation, and we're going to do the exact same steps on the recommended items page item. All right, if you were to look through all this, it's exactly the same as we had done before. So what I'm going to do before I go there is open up our guitars one again and copy this BML code so that I don't have to type it in by hand. Highlight that whole thing, do a Control-C, close out of here, hit back, hit the back button again, back button one more time, and we just added that rule into model configuration. Now we're going to add the same type of rule into recommended items from here, recommended items. For create quote, choose rules and click list. And there's one in here by default. If I open it up, it's associating to all was true. So all of the data that's flowing from the configurators to the original commerce process object. But we're going to create a new rule in here by clicking add, and we'll call it guitars again. And down the lower left, associated to the guitars commerce process, click the add button in the lower right, and that's when you see the option to choose advanced define function. Click model variable name and choose that underscore model underscore segment var name as we did for the first rule that we had built. and then I'll paste in the BML code that I'd copied earlier. Underscore model segment var name double equals guitars. That all looks correct. Click Save and Close. Click Update for this rule. And just as we had done on the other one, make the guitars first in the list of the multiple rules. Change it to a number 1 and click Apply. All right. So I've gone through all of those steps. BML code, save and close, make sure guitars is number 1, just like we had done in the first area where we built that rule. Now we have to do a new thing. It says navigate to admin process invocation, turn on the checkboxes for model configuration and recommended items. With those checkboxes turned on, click the deploy button. Now this is a common, necessary piece building in CPQ Cloud, is that often it's not enough just to create the object that you're working on. You will also have to deploy that object. And if it happens to be a process invocation definition, under here Commerce Documents Process Invocation, you have to go in and turn on the checkboxes for model config and recommended, and any of the other ones that you might have changed, and then click the deploy button right in here. All right, this is like clicking the deploy button for a data table. All right, it's a local deploy button in the area where you're building things, or deploy button for a doc designer template or something like that. So turn on the checkbox for these two, click the deploy button, and behind the scenes it'll sort of activate those rules that I had just built. Next, in our instructions, click Admin, start up quick links for guitars commerce process. Click the deploy button to deploy the commerce process, the new changes that we had put in place. So click Admin, quick links. I'd done this earlier, but we're doing it one more time now that we've made a few other changes. Choose the guitars commerce process and hit the deploy button. And that takes about, as I say, 30 seconds or so. I'm going to close out of here and just trust that it moves forward in the usual timing. And while that's running, this is where we're going to fill out the rest of the product hierarchy. Remember, we created a product family earlier, but I didn't create the configurator to go along with it. So it says we're going to build the hierarchy, we're going to build some attributes, and put the attributes on the desktop layout for this new configurator. The way we do it is go to Admin Catalog Definition List, click Add, and pick the new guitars product family, add that in, create a product line level object, which we're going to call electric guitars, drill down below that one, and create a model, a product model object called guitar order. So that looks like this. Admin catalog definition. You can click the link in the secondary row of links up near the top. Hit the list button once, and now you see the Amo Pizza Chicago and High Tech Managed Hosting product families. We created the definition of the product family earlier, but we didn't build out the hierarchical objects for it, and that's done in this other space called catalog definition. I'm going to click Add in this area with the other product families and just choose the guitars product family that I had basically declared earlier. Now the guitars product family shows up here. We'll hit List button to drill down a level and create a product line level object called electric guitars. In the future, I might have, subdivisions for electric guitars versus bass guitars versus acoustic guitars, etc. But I'm just going to have electric guitars at this point. Click the List button from the product line level to go down to the model level. Click Add, and we'll build a model level object at this point called guitar order. Click Add, so that when a user goes through this configurator, they're going to be configuring a guitar order. Let's click, I guess clicking the add already saved it in place. Now, go to Admin Homepage, click the yellow curly icon for the guitars product family. Yeah, see, building the pieces that I've shown you so far does not yet put the guitars product family on the entry point to get into the configurator yet. So to do that, go to Admin, and underneath Style and Templates, choose Home Page. And for the guitars configurator, we click this yellow curly arrow icon over on the right-hand side underneath Last Refreshed On, and then click Deployment Center. Deploy. So again, it's a local kind of deploy button for, in this case, the home page represents the entry page for getting into a configurator. Down in the bottom, let me hit refresh, and the deployment finished. At this point, if I go to product list, now I've got the guitars showing up here, and electric guitars. I can't yet go into the configurator for it, though, because I haven't put any attributes on the desktop layout. So we will do that. It's right here. Navigate to admin catalog definition list. Go to configurable attribute for the guitars family. Create a new attribute called brand. And we'll put in the possible choices for it of the very generic brand X, brand Y, and brand Z. We won't put in any images just to make this quick, but you obviously could put images to associate to the selectable choices. All right, so we go to catalog definition, hit the list button, and now for our guitars product family, we need some attributes. So we'll go down, choose configurable attribute list, click add, and create a new one called brand. I'm going to make this a single select menu option, and we'll call the first option brand X. The variable name auto-populate add entry. So one of the choices will be brand X. The second choice will be brand Y. Variable name add entry. The third choice will be brand Z. The ever-popular brand Z. So those are three choices for this, and we'll set brand X as being the default. Go down to the bottom here. Set a value in that. Click add. Actually, I'm going to click add and new. Let's build one more attribute in the same space called color. And the three choices for this will be wood grain, black, or blue. Wood grain is a common color for a guitar, but also if it's an electric guitar, black or blue are common colors for those. So we'll put in an option here for wood grain, add entry, black, add entry, and blue. So those will be our three choices, add entry. And the default is going to be, let's make black the default in this case. That's a good color. All right, we'll click add. So now I've got my attributes in place here. I've got the one called brand and the one called color. We're going to go down to the guitar model level and create a configuration flow object using start and end node as the node type, and we'll put the two attributes onto the desktop layout. I'm going to do this as quick as I can. I know these steps might be known by a lot of people on this call, so that the punchline is coming at the end when we create a new quote and see if it lands in the guitars area or not. So let's go underneath guitars and keep drilling down to the model level, and down at the model level, go into configuration flows. Hit list. We have to create a new object in here. I'll call it guitar flow. Oh, actually, I've done this before and just used the word guitars. I'll leave that. Simple enough. Choose the condition always true, and then down in the bottom, start and end node. Click add. I'll click add and back. All right, so now I've got my configuration flow object, and to go into the desktop layout, over here on the right-hand side, click desktop. And we'll simply put those two attributes into the default tab. So let's choose add attributes, and over on the right-hand side, choose brand. Drag that one in place, and then we'll choose color. Drag that one just below brand. The simplest possible configurator, and it's not going to trigger rules to put any parts in the parts list or anything like that. It's just something to indicate, we've got some attributes on a configuration layout object. Getting close to the moment of truth. It says, last step, create a quote level commerce attribute on the guitar's commerce process object and place it on the guitar's commerce desktop layout. This attribute, which we're going to call this is the guitar's commerce process, and I'll actually highlight that from here and see if I can copy and paste into my lab environment. The purpose is simply to identify if the quote has been generated going to the commerce process object for guitars versus the original. All right, so we're going to go to admin process definition, and for the guitar's commerce process, choose documents and hit list, and go to attributes at the quote level and hit list, and create a brand new quote level attribute. Click add down here in the lower right corner. And we're going to call the name of this attribute, this is the guitar's commerce process. It's not going to store any data. I'll make it a text attribute type. That's fine. It'll have a little box next to it. But the only purpose is to indicate that we have landed in the commerce process object for guitars as opposed to the original commerce process object. So let's add that attribute, and then click the button that says Save and Edit the Desktop Layout. So this takes us to the desktop layout for the guitar's commerce process object. Remember, we've got two commerce process objects now. And I'm going to click Add Attributes and find the new one that I just created called This is the Guitar's Commerce Process, and put it underneath this email attribute over on the right-hand side. There's a little gap for a space over there. So we'll put that in as a label and click Save. All right, I do have to deploy commerce again, the guitar's commerce process, because I've made these changes. So let me do that. Go up to Admin, open up Quick Links, next to Process Definition, choose the guitar's commerce process object. You'll see the red lettering in there. Let's hit the Deploy button. If I were to expand other areas, like underneath quote level or line level, you could see red lettering for any object that has been updated in this area. But whenever you make create a new attribute in the commerce area, it affects the workflow steps, which is why steps is lit up in red. Let's hit the refresh button after waiting for 10 seconds or so. So it's all done. All right, now comes the moment of truth to see if this is going to work. So I'll get my headset on there more properly. It's starting to fall off. Now it says create a quote from Amo Pizza Chicago configurator. Click Create Quote and see if the quote was generated using the guitar's commerce process or not. It should not have been creating, into the guitar's commerce process because we didn't set up our rule to pay attention to the pizza configurator. However, it says after you've done that with the pizza configurator, go to the guitar's configurator, click Create Quote, and again see if the quote was generated using the guitar's commerce process. In this instance, that should be the case. Let's see if it works. Good. Go over to Product List and go to the pizza configurator first. Click Configure Pizza Order to go into that configurator. I'll just take the default set of parts that goes in on this configurator and click Create Quote in the upper right corner. And we should not see that new attribute called This is a guitar configurator, or whatever words I had used, underneath the email attribute, and we don't. So I'd put my new attribute underneath name, title, phone, cell, email, underneath that list, and I do not see it here, which is what I expect from the pizza configurator. But now let's go back to Product List, to the guitars configurator. Guitars, electric guitars, configure guitar order. Click on that link. Here are my two options. I'll make a wood grain from brand Y, and click Create Quote. So now this time, when I click Create Quote, if everything is working properly, I should see over on the lower right corner, this is the guitar's commerce process, and I do. So that field was only put in there to serve as an indicator so that I would know which commerce process I had landed in. And it did seem to work properly. Again, I'm going to take 10 seconds to switch gears back to my slides. All right, here we are. So that was a walkthrough of all of the concepts we had put in place ahead of this testing slide, and it did work the way we expected. So we create a quote using the new configurator and verify that I do see my indicator attribute. Looks like there are a couple of questions, I think, in the chat message. Let me talk through those quickly. Presentation begins shortly. Chat question will be addressed. Could you please share the document? Okay, so none of those questions have to do with what I've been talking through. One says, could you please share the document lab? But I've just shared it as a demo. It's not intended for these live events to have it put into the hands of any of the folks on the audience. So yeah, the viewing of that was simply my doing a demo on it. All right, so now we're into the summary slide, having gone through that presentation. It says, we should have learned how to understand potential reasons for multiple commerce process objects. There was one slide on that early on here. We spent a little bit of time considering that when you create a new commerce process object, now you have the ability to create a different set of attributes in the world of commerce. You could make different workflow steps, and you could have different integrations tied to that commerce process object versus another commerce process object. So those are potential reasons why it could be helpful. And then I did walk through to create a new product family and a new commerce process object. But perhaps the most important thing was to set up the conditions to trigger a particular commerce process from a particular configurator. All right, the last thing we always talk about in these live events, and I still do have a couple of minutes, I guess, before we get around to being a full hour, so I think the timing is working out, is to mention this great application that's been made available called Cloud Learning Subscriptions. It says here probably the best way to learn about Oracle SaaS applications. There are several different categories of learning videos and techniques available, and it's integrated with you as an individual walking through step by step these sort of learning paths. But not only integrated to that, it says it's integrated to practices with hands-on labs. So there is a way to get lab environments, if that was the question in the chat, but it's through the CLS. It's not part of the live event that I'm working through right now. You'd have to work through the options that you see when you're in CLS, Cloud Learning Subscription. If you do want to, dig in and actually get into certification exams, you can. And the learning pathways have checkpoints along the way where they ask you some questions. Have I, accurately learned things? And you can get some feedback there. There's also instructor access if you look toward the bottom of this bullet list. So there is a way to submit a question through Cloud Learning Subscription, and it travels through the system and finds its way to an instructor such as myself, or there are lots of great instructors at Oracle, and we answer the question and send it back. So it's got lots and lots of good features. Mentioned here on the next slide, the life cycle. So there's evaluate, implement, deploy, maintain, renew, standard life cycle stages, and CLS can have benefit on all of those stages. I mentioned there's kind of a visual integrated learning pathway. So it, just like when you take the subway train, which I think is the pattern for this type of graphic. When you take the subway, you see the stops along the subway. Well, here you see the stops along the way for moving forward along a particular pathway for learning a particular type of software. Now, how do I get to all of this? If you've never navigated to Cloud Learning Subscription before, I'm going to show that to you in one more demo. Notice in the lower right corner it says go to education.oracle.com/cloud. Let me pause as I switch gears again to share my desktop. Here we are. Let me open up a different browser window. This one should work. And up in the address bar, I will type in education.oracle.com. And to get that /cloud at the tail end, what I do is go to education.oracle.com and then click this Oracle Cloud link at the top. You could have just put in /cloud at the tail end of that as well. So I'll click on Oracle Cloud up here. And notice it recognizes who I am. It recognizes my learning path, and it recognizes what I've done so far, presents videos to me that might be interesting. But what I'm going to do is go to this list of all the learning subscription library items and find the one for CPQ, which happens to be right here. Oracle CPQ Cloud Learning Subscription. Click on that. And here I see that, subway station type of graphic, and go down a little bit further and click on any one of these large icons to drill down and find very useful videos and capability for, as I said earlier, getting into a lab environment, sending questions to an instructor, etc. All kinds of good things. All right, just switch gears to come back here to my slides. And I guess the next slide is the one that mentioned the demonstration. So I jumped the gun slightly ahead of that one. Sorry. But you got a chance to see it live as I navigated to to this page that they're showing on the right, and there are lots of different categories. I mentioned CPQ, obviously, but financials, marketing, sales, service, etc., all good things. Well, thank you, everyone, for attending. There was one more in the another question in the chat. Actually, now there's several coming in. Let me spend time on these. One says, how many families can I create? There's only a practical limit to that, the number of product families. The software doesn't really care, but if you add more, it can clutter things up a bit, but it doesn't really have an upper limit on that. Next, can the label and variable name be the same? Yes, they can. They could be exactly the same if you like. But what people often do is change the variable name so that it might have some extra information kind of tucked in a compact fashion. So they might put an underscore and then some acronym that means something, and another underscore and another acronym. And you probably wouldn't want that on a human-readable name. It might confuse people. But if you wanted to have them exactly the same, sure. One more question. How will it work in the process start when creating a quote first? Oh, interesting. When you create a quote first and then go up to the top and click Add Line Items, it simply takes you back to the configurator and has you pick from the different options available. So if you started from a quote first, it would have to. It's a great question. It would have to figure it out for the. I haven't done this actually. It would have to figure it out for that situation and then reevaluate it when you get to the end point of the configurator that you happen to be in. I think what I'm going to say here is you might want to set up that Add Line Items button coming from a quote with logic on it that will not allow to cross over to a different configurator that's not consistent with the quoting area that you happen to be in. I don't know the full answer to this, but my hunch is you'll probably be better served because otherwise the rule might fire and it won't find the appropriate option. So I don't know if all that makes sense, but basically I'm encouraging you to build rules on the Add Line Items Commerce Action button so that it's consistent with picking the right ones. I think that's the answer. Let's see. One other question says, is this recorded? And my understanding is yes, it's going to be recorded. I was speaking with a producer earlier, and he mentioned that. Another question, is there an integration with EBS's configurator? No, those two are considered to be separate from one another. The closest, if you wanted to build an integration, yes, you could have data passed back and forth, but there's not one that's out of the box to do that. And let's see, am I using 2016 R2? Wow, the questions just keep running. I am using 2016 R2 CPQ Cloud version. I added new product model level deployed, but was not able to see product list menu. Could you please suggest how to fix that? I added a new product to the model level deployed. I think the reason is you might not have created any attribute definitions. Until you create attribute definitions, you won't see the option to create the desktop layout object and the configuration flow object. But once you create some attribute definitions, now you'll be able to. And the reason it behaves that way is because the desktop layout wouldn't have any meaning if you couldn't put attributes onto it. How many variable names can we create? As many as you like. It's basically a practical thing. Can I please send the link to the PowerPoint and document? Unfortunately, it's not possible for this. These presentations are not made available by any means other than just live through this event. Yeah, I thought that question would probably come up sooner or later. But yeah, the answer is you'd have to go back to the recording. So apparently this is recorded, and it will be displayed somewhere in the future. All right, so I think I got through that list of questions. Again, thanks everybody for attending. It's very great to have you here, and hopefully this was very helpful. Best of luck in the future using CPQ Cloud.
On behalf of Oracle University, thank you for attending this live presentation.